but starting with Vince Wilfork, who, as I mentioned, was just announced as the inductee for the 2022 Patriots Hall of Fame fan vote. Vince Wilfork doesn't really need much of an introduction, I don't think, especially with this generation of Patriots fans that typically listen to our show, Alex. I think everybody understands what he brought to the table, what he meant to the Patriots. But what was your initial reaction, your thoughts on Vince Wilfork going into the Patriots Hall of Fame over Logan Mankins and Mike Vrabel, who are two really worthy candidates as well? So this was not an easy decision by any means.
Yeah, no, both certainly deserving, but I thought Vince was the sixth player to go in his first year of eligibility. I think he said it best. He thinks he is. I would argue he is the greatest nose tackle in the history of the game. When you talked about all that he could do along the defensive line, the athleticism you brought to the position, he really was somewhat of a unicorn. I think too, you talk about, how the different generations might view him. My favorite Vince Wilfork factoid, I guess you would call it, is he's one of only two players. There's some coaches and other people who have this, but one of only two players with the ring from both, let's call it Dynasty 1.0 and Dynasty 2.0, right? He was a rookie in 2004 when they beat the Eagles. And then 10 years later, he's on that team that beats the Seahawks. And if you think about it, that really is a fascinating place to be in history, right? Him and Tom Brady are the only two that can claim that. And when you talk about what that last Super Bowl meant in the early 2000s, and then what that first Super Bowl meant in the mid 2010s, to be on both those teams. I actually got to ask him about it. I've been throwing that trivia question out there for years, and it was cool to get to ask him about it today. And I thought he gave a very thoughtful answer. First off, crediting Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft and the program, the sustainability they brought to the program for all those years, but also that he was able to take lessons he learned as a rookie in 2004 and from that core. And he mentioned Teddy Bruschi, Ty Law, Richard Seymour, some other names that are escaping me, but he mentioned those guys. And then, 10 years later, he's able to teach those lessons and pass those lessons on to guys like Devin McCourty and Dante Hightower. And who else did he say? I think he said Gerard Mayo, Julian Edelman, right? And you look at where the Patriots kind of are now, and in this era of turnover now, where the core is changing and the base composition of the team is changing. Who are those guys, right? If they're going to make another run at this thing, I think to bring it to the modern conversation around the team, I think we maybe underestimate what Wilfork was as a leader and how he brought that from the first dynasty in. And now, who can we look at that was on that 2018 team, young players on the 2018 team that are still here and can continue to pass that advice on. So obviously Vince Wilfork, very deserving. He should get his gold jacket as well, but good to see him get this step. And it should be a fun induction ceremony. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, great speech, I'm sure, coming from Big Vince. I think the one thing you were kind of hinting at it there that stood out to me from what he said today was how easy it was for players to come into the Patriots system and basically just jump on the moving train, right? They were such a well-oiled machine in the 10, 11 years that Vince Wilfork was with the Patriots. And he mentioned that they were just so good at assimilating new guys, right? Bringing in new talent and having them plug and play those guys into spots where other guys might have left. They passed that torch, so to speak, from Bruschi to Mayo, or from, McGinnis and Vrabel at outside linebacker to the next generation. And Vince kind of mentioned that just from a culture standpoint, it was so easy for them to break in these new players and pass those torches off and keep the train rolling. And I think that Bill Belichick and the Patriots organization and Tom Brady get a ton of credit for the football success, for the X's and O's, the schematics, the Belichick mastery, and all those types of things. But Belichick, the culture builder, I'm not sure if we talk about that enough, right? Because I think a lot of people look at his culture and think it's not fun. They channel their Lane Johnson and they talk about, how it's so militaristic and how they don't get to talk in the media. They don't have to let them be themselves. I actually think that a lot of players that you talk to, and we're lucky enough to be able to talk to guys like Vince Wilfork, or last year Richard Seymour, or whoever gets inducted into the Patriots Hall of Fame always does some sort of media. And I think the culture that they had in that locker room was really second to none. And that was why we used to talk about it like, oh, well, they'll just draft some guy in the sixth round, in the seventh round, and they'll put him in for Ty Law, and they won't skip a beat. Well, in reality, they didn't skip a beat in a lot of instances because of that culture and because of the winning culture and just how easy it was for people to pass that torch and pick things up and kind of just get on the train. And I thought that was really interesting. He also made a very good case for being the best nose tackle to ever play. I mean, I don't think anybody could have made a better case than he made for himself, probably. And that little speech that he gave about
Right.
playing in different alignments, 0 to 5 technique, somebody that didn't just play straight up over the nose or as a one technique in the shade in the A gap all the time. This is somebody that the Patriots did move around the defensive line. They were flexible with him. They did hunt matchups for him in certain situations. He could rush the passer. He could stay on the field in passing situations. I think his all around versatility and ability to play in all three downs might separate him from some of the other true nose tackles like he was talking about, true two gapping nose tackles like a Ted Washington before him, right, on the Patriots, or someone like that who was really just there to play on first and second down. Vince was an effective player for multiple alignments on multiple downs and really a true professional in every sense of the word, no matter where they lined him up on the defensive line, and a very well-deserved honor. It should get into the Pro Football Hall of Fame in Canton here soon as well. I think that Richard Seymour getting in is a good indication that Vince might have a really good chance and probably will get in eventually, just because Richard Seymour didn't traditionally fill up the stat sheet either, right? He wasn't somebody that had 150 career sacks or something crazy like that either. So I think that the Hall of Fame voters understand the value in the Patriots system and what Vince Wilfork, what Richard Seymour, what some of those guys on the defensive line brought to the table. So I actually do think Vince has a pretty good chance of getting the gold jacket as well. I already got the red jacket, but in a couple of years, I think the gold jacket's coming too.
Yeah, I mean that's what Seymour did, right? And it's just going to take us pushing and pushing this narrative that it's beyond the stats and it's not the Fantasy
Yeah.
Football Hall of Fame. It'll take longer than it should, but I agree with you. I think he'll get there eventually.